your presence into this place. Lord, we know that this is not brick and mortar, but it is the house of the Lord. So Lord, as we agree together, we know that you inhabit praises of people. And so, Lord, we're going to let our house, this is the house of the Lord. We are the house. And as we lift up praises to your name, and as we lift up praise to you, we expect that you will be among us. And for this, we give you praise and honor and glory. And we dedicate this night to you. In Jesus' name. And everything.
I'm going to tell you a couple Bible stories. First, how many have ever heard the verse from Psalms, how good it is for brothers and sisters to sit together? You ever heard that verse? Okay, how many have heard it in Hebrew? All right, here's in Hebrew. Hine, say that for me. Hine, ma tov, umanayim, shevet, achim, gam yachad. Shevet is what you're doing now, and gam yachad is together. All right, a couple of biblical stories. Who knows about the book of Numbers? Book of Numbers in the Old Testament? Okay, the Jewish people read the 5 books of Moses in consecutive order. It takes us a year. Right now we call it the Torah. Right now we're in the book of Numbers. And I want to tell you 2 weeks in a row, quick stories. Last week was about a king named Balak who hired a prophet named Bilam to curse Israel. Well, the guy wanted to earn his salary, right? And he didn't want the king to get mad. So he's going to do his job, although God tries to send every signal, including a talking donkey, to stop Bilam. Doesn't work. Bilam climbs the mountain, gets on the top, and he looks down at Israel, and you know what? Has anyone here ever heard of Pinchas? He is distinguished by having the only medal ever awarded by God in the Bible. Pinchas, he got something called a Brit Shalom, the covenant of peace. Why? Here's what happened. There was a group of Midianites and Moabites that don't exist anymore who were trying to seduce Israel into idolatry and apostasy. And Israel was threatening to go along. They were getting seduced by it. And Pinchas, who was a priest, took matters into his own hands and stopped it. And God awards him with this Medal of Honor. And so what we're here tonight to say is thank you, and God bless you for being here and for trying to help the Jewish people and all the people that love Israel take action to stop the hurt of Israel and to bless Israel. And for those of you who may know the organization Christians United for Israel, one of their favorite lines is from the book of Esther, where Mordecai says to Esther, maybe you were created just for this moment. I want to close with the most famous blessing in the Bible, in the Old Testament, from the book of Numbers, the priestly benediction. But I told a story to Reverend Shaw before, and he said I should tell you the story. Who watched Star Trek? Anybody watch the original Star Trek series? How do you say hello in Vulcan? How do you say hello? Right? You know, do that? And what did he say? He said, live long and prosper. You know where that comes from? Mr. Spock's grandfather, we call him Zadie in Yiddish, was a priest, a Kohen. And when priests bless, they go like this, and they say the priestly benediction. And it begins with, a lot of you know it, may God bless you and keep you, may God's countenance shine. All right, I'm going to say it to you in Hebrew in a second. And when the producer said, how should Vulcan say hello to honor his grandfather, he said, how about this? Live long and prosper. So that's where the blessing comes from, and we want to thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for being here tonight. Why don't you rise for a moment, let me bless you. May God bless you and keep you. May God lift up God's countenance to you and be gracious unto you. May God lift up God's countenance to you and grant you all of us, a world of peace and a life of peace. Amen. Amen.
Put your hands together for the round of the Okay, at this time we're going to ask Aaron Elliott.
And buses labeled Nia Blanca, non-whites, and Neta Blanca, only whites. In fact, I got a free ride to a South African police station because of my opinions about apartheid.
All right. Yeah.
Apartheid is not Israel.
All right.
Where Arab representatives have been in the Israeli Knesset, the Congress, since it started in 1949. Apartheid is not Israel, where there are 5 official Arab parties. Apartheid is not Israel, where Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Druze and Baha'is can all worship freely. Apartheid is not Israel, where 20% of the student body and 10% of the faculty are Arabs. Apartheid is not Israel, where the recent Miss Israel is Ethiopian. Apartheid is not Israel, where Salim Juban, an Arab member of the Supreme Court, an Arab Muslim member of the Supreme Court, sentenced the former Jewish president of Israel to jail. Step 2 lies. Demonize and then delegitimize. To separate Jews from their lives and from their land, it serves to say they have no claim to either. And they say now that Israel has no claim and Jews have no claim to Israel. Well, in that case, we can all throw out our Bibles.
Yeah. Right.
Jews are the indigenous people of the land. We've been there for over 3,000 years. Jerusalem is, was, always has been, always will be the capital of only one people, Israel. You can't stick a shovel in the ground in Israel without coming up with an artifact that has Hebrew writing on it. And so it's inconvenient. And some people are trying to rewrite history. So our ancient holy sites, such as the Western Wall, the Cave of the Patriarchs, Rachel's tomb, Joseph's tomb, many churches, ancient churches, are now being called, with the help of the United Nations, they're being called mosques. And they are bulldozing Jewish and Christian history. Another lie. Jewish homes in the West Bank, which if you know your history, and you know it, is Judea and Samaria. Judea. Jewish homes in Judea are an obstacle to peace. Why are Jewish homes any place an affront to anyone? We find no fault with Arabs living in Israel. So why must any place that's potentially Palestinian be ethnically cleansed of Jews? We don't believe in ethnic cleansing. Lie 3. Palestine belongs to the Palestinians. This is a deception. People think that we don't know that Israel, when it was conquered by the Romans, who were really annoyed at the Israelites for putting such a fight up, renamed the land Philistia after the Philistines. Remember David and Goliath, the Philistine? So they called it Philistia. And that's what it was called. The Palestine Symphony, the Palestine Post, the Palestine Electric Company, the Palestine Brigade, all before 1948 when Israel got independent. These were all Jewish. And then we decided we're going to name ourselves. We're going to go back to the name that God gave us, Israel. And so prior to 1967, there are no news headlines ever referring to Arabs as Palestinians. Lie 4. Israel doesn't want peace. Israel's put out a hand of peace when the Arabs attacked it in 1948, 1956, 1967, 1973. Israel was the victor of those wars. They made concessions to the perpetrators. And you know what the Arab states responded? 3 no's. No peace, no negotiations, no recognition of a Jewish state. Israel gave up land and was willing to give up more land for peace. But we see what happens in Gaza. We gave up land and got terror.
That's right.
If you want to know who the obstacle to peace are, read the Hamas Charter. I have a table back there with all kinds of books, including the Hamas Charter. We read it in their own words what they say. One of many, many dozens of quotes. They say, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. That's their words, not mine. Lie 5, it's a Jewish problem. As much as the enemies of Jews in Israel would have us believe that this is a Jewish problem, it's not. The haters of Israel call Israel the little Satan, and the U.S. the big Satan. We here are in the crosshairs, and it was pretty clear in the Boston bombings, in Fort Hood, and 9/11. Just as the Holocaust started as a final solution to the Jewish problem and quickly escalated to embroil the whole world, so today the anti-Israel frenzy has metastasized. It's a cancer, and it's including the whole world, and an attack on Christians. Christians are fleeing Muslim-controlled lands as they face unprecedented persecution, arrests, and violence. And it's not just sporadic violence of mobs going on Christmas killing sprees, but it's policy. Last week, the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia called for the destruction of all churches in the region. And as we speak, churches are burning. In much of the Middle East, except for Israel, being a Christian is a crime, and speaking about one's Christian beliefs is punishable by death. So we demonize and delegitimize, and the next thing, punish. What do you do with demons who have no right to exist? It's a war of words that starts before the war of deeds. Israel has developed a world-class defense system to intercept rockets. But there's another, more insidious war. It's a campaign of boycotts, divestments, sanctions, and it's being waged in our communities, our campuses, and even our churches. It's not okay to judge Israel by a standard which is not applied to any other nation. And anyone who advocates treating one people and one nation differently than others is committing an act of prejudice. Let's shed some light on those lies. But first, I want to share a story, a very personal story of my mother's sister, Gutcha. It was the winter of 1945 and World War II was coming to an end. Gucha was around 20 years old then, and she was in a forced march from her slave labor camp to an unknown destination. The Nazis had evacuated the camp to get rid of the prisoners and evidence of their crimes. Gucha was barely alive, suffering from frost, starvation, and typhus. On the way, she and a girlfriend couldn't go anymore. They dropped out of line and they hid in an alleyway. They ripped the yellow patches off their clothing, but you could still see and everybody could still know that they were Jewish. As they were hiding, a woman came upon them and the girls froze. This stranger, wearing a tiny little cross, had the choice of turning them in or facing death herself. And she chose the path of a righteous Christian. And she saved them. Because of her, my aunt survived, moved to Israel, had children and grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren. Dozens of people were saved by that one act. I don't know the name of that courageous Christian who saved my aunt's life, but I do know that it is on her shoulders that you and all righteous Christians stand today. Evoking her memory, remembering my Aunt Gucha,